Ethan Blake mastered everything except the art of feeling. To the world, he was a legend in tailored charcoal suits, the mind behind New York's most breathtaking landmarks, the architect who could bend glass and steel into poetry, yet never let his voice rise above a quiet, measured tone. He ran an empire, he commanded boardrooms. He moved cities without ever moving his heart. People didn't know what to call him. Genius? Control freak? Ice king? It didn't matter, he wasn't built for warmth. But inside the walls of his sky-high penthouse, flawless, silent, and surgical in design, there was no applause, no echo of affection, just space. Empty, pristine, and untouched, like the rest of him. He hadn't always been cold. Once, there was a boy who waited at the top of the stairs, listening to his mother cry quietly into a pillow night after night, her heartbreak blooming from the cracks his father left behind. From that silence, Ethan learned one truth. Love is not safety. Love is exposure. And exposure? That was weakness. So he built his life like he built his buildings. Airtight, symmetrical, impenetrable. No lovers, no vulnerability, no room for things that couldn't be measured, bought, or built. And yet, in his quietest moments, between the meetings, the awards, the flashing city lights, there was an ache. Not desire, not loneliness, something stranger. A hunger to hold something untouched, unbroken. Not to consume it, but to protect it. He imagined her sometimes, not her face, not her voice, just the feeling. Like sunlight through fog. Like something sacred no one else had ruined yet. He didn't believe in fate. But fate, impatient and unapologetic, believed in him. And one evening, in a room full of masks and martinis, she arrived. It was a Thursday night, and the Sterling Grand buzzed with polished laughter, champagne flutes, and artificial warmth. A charity gala for urban youth, a cause Ethan had funded for years, though he hadn't set foot in the ballroom in nearly a decade. He showed up out of obligation. That's what his calendar said: be seen, shake hands, smile without meaning it. So he did. He moved like a shadow in a suit, his presence felt before it was seen. Conversations shifted when he approached, not out of warmth, but out of reverence. Or fear. Ethan couldn't tell anymore. The night blurred, predictable and painfully performative, until it didn't. Until he saw her. She wasn't center stage, wasn't vying for attention. She stood alone, near a marble column, kissed by golden light. Still, quiet, and utterly unbothered by the show around her. His breath caught. Something about her presence sliced through the noise like a clean draft of air in a suffocating room. She looked real. Not carefully curated, not designed for effect, just real. Her dress was soft green, understated, elegant in the way nature is elegant, without trying. Her hair flowed in gentle waves down her back, and when she looked up, her eyes held the kind of innocence the world hadn't touched yet. Not fragile, no. She didn't seem weak, she seemed untouched, undamaged. And in that moment, Ethan knew. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story. But something in his bones whispered, this is what you were searching for. This is why nothing else ever felt enough. She turned slightly, smiled at a server passing by, a small, sincere gesture. That smile did something to him. It didn't ignite lust. It sparked stillness, the kind he hadn't known in years. Ethan crossed the room without thinking, without planning. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smoother than he felt. She looked up at him, startled but unafraid. "Yes?" He studied her eyes. Quiet eyes. Brave eyes. "What's your name?" A beat. Then, softly, "Clara." "Clara Monroe." He nodded once. "I'm Ethan." And when their hands met, it wasn't fireworks. It was gravity. The kind you don't fight. The kind that tells you deep down you've just found the place you never knew you were missing. After the gala, Ethan didn't sleep. He tried to file the night away like everything else in his life. Neatly, logically, unemotionally. But Clara Monroe didn't file neatly into anything. Her voice still echoed in his mind, soft, uncertain. Her eyes still lingered in his thoughts, wide open, unguarded. It wasn't love, not yet. Ethan didn't even believe in that word, but there was something about her presence that pulled at the few untouched threads left inside him. So he did what he always did when something unsettled him. He investigated. Within hours, his team delivered a discreet report. Clara Monroe, 26, part-time literature teacher at a community center in Brooklyn, lived in a modest walk-up apartment. Her mother was recovering from long-term illness. Her younger brother, Leo, was in high school, a scholarship kid with too much potential and too few resources. No scandals, no noise, no secrets. Just a quiet woman trying to keep her world together with small hands and too much weight. Ethan read the report twice, then again. She wasn't chasing anything, not money, not attention, not him. And that made her the rarest kind of person. So the next evening, as dusk folded over the city, Clara opened her apartment door and froze. There he was, Ethan Blake. Not in a town car, not behind tinted glass. Just standing in her hallway, holding a small bouquet of white peonies. Quiet, deliberate, and completely out of place. Her voice trembled. How did you find me? I find what I want, he said simply, and I don't waste time. Her breath caught. I don't understand. Ethan met her gaze. His eyes were unreadable, but not unfeeling. I'd like to make you an offer. And then he said it. Marry me. Clara stared at him like he had spoken another language. What? I'll take care of everything, your mother's care, your brother's school, your life. In return, I want you as my wife. Silence fell between them. Long, dense, unsettling. Finally she whispered, "Why?" His answer came after a pause that felt like confession. Because you're the first person who made me believe there might be something worth trusting, outside of myself. Her hands trembled, her world tilted, and against every piece of logic in her mind, she nodded. And Ethan, without smiling, slid a ring onto her finger and said, quietly, "Good," he murmured, as if it were already decided. "I'll take care of everything, the venue, the paperwork. All you have to do is show up tomorrow." They were married in less than 24 hours. No guests, no flowers, no grand procession. Just a glass chapel tucked inside a quiet corner of Manhattan, where sunlight spilled in through arched windows like a whispered blessing. Clara stood in ivory, simple, sleeveless, borrowed from no tradition but her own sense of stillness. The silk brushed her skin like water, unfamiliar yet gentle. Ethan stood across from her, composed in charcoal black, his gaze steady but unreadable. The ceremony was brief, 7 minutes, maybe less. No vows, no kisses, just the quiet shuffle of papers, the soft clink of rings, and the echo of a life turning a page, without making a sound. That evening, Ethan brought her to his penthouse. Clara had never seen such silence look so permanent. The place was stunning. Glass, stone, light, but nothing felt lived in, nothing felt touched. She sat at the edge of the bed, unsure where to place her hands. The air between them wasn't heavy, but it weighted. Ethan entered, silent, removing his watch as though disarming himself. He didn't move closer. Not yet. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked quietly. Clara looked up. She could have lied, but she didn't. "A little." "I understand," he said, and somehow he did. He stepped forward, not with force but with care, like someone approaching a painting they weren't sure they were allowed to touch. His hand reached out, paused midair, then gently brushed her cheek. Not to claim, to connect. "You remind me of something I thought I'd forgotten," he murmured. "That there was once a version of me that used to feel." That night, he didn't reach for her body. He waited. He listened to every breath, every pause, every word unspoken. And slowly, like dawn creeping over a frozen city, two people began to thaw. Not in passion, but in presence. Something in Ethan Blake shifted after that night. Not loudly, not all at once, but like frost melting beneath sunlight. Quiet, steady, irreversible. He was still the same man by title, CEO, visionary, the architect who redesigned cities and silenced boardrooms with a glance. But now he would leave meetings early. Cancel dinners he once deemed critical, just to be home by the time Clara brewed her evening tea. He began to move differently. Slower, softer. Clara noticed it in the way he listened when she spoke. Really listened. She would talk about books she taught, poems that lingered, or childhood memories tucked into corners of her mind she thought no one would care to hear. But he listened as if her words were blueprints, pieces of a design he hadn't yet learned to read. Sometimes she'd call him into her studio with paint still drying on her hands. "I just finished this," she'd say, eyes searching his face. "Tell me what you see." And Ethan, who had studied angles and shadows his whole life, would look at a canvas and say something that surprised them both. "Peace," he once said. Then, after a pause, and maybe hope. Clara never said it aloud, but in those moments, she saw it clearly. Ethan was learning how to feel again, and it terrified him. He didn't know how to name the emotions, so they leaked out in strange ways. Like the time an investor placed a casual hand on Clara's back at a gallery event. The touch wasn't inappropriate, just unnecessary. Ethan crossed the room in seconds, wordless, calm. But his arm slid around Clara's waist like armor. It wasn't anger. It was fear dressed in silence. Clara didn't pull away. She only glanced up at him, her hand resting gently on his chest. "It's okay," she whispered. But Ethan didn't answer. Because somewhere inside him, a war was still being fought between the man who needed to control everything and the man who was slowly learning to surrender. To her, he should have seen it coming. Clara had been quieter that week. Smiling, yes, but a little more tired around the eyes. Her paint-stained fingers trembled when she thought no one was looking. She waved off his concern with soft reassurances. "I'm fine, just excited. The showcase is almost ready." Ethan wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that love meant trusting her rhythm. But in doing so, he forgot that love also meant knowing when someone was dancing too close to collapse. So he stepped back, just a little. Gave her space. Let her push herself. Because he thought she needed to feel capable. Because he still didn't fully understand that love wasn't just about giving someone freedom. It was also about knowing when to step in before they break. And then she did. It was late afternoon. Light poured through the windows of her studio in amber gold, kissing the edges of her canvas. She was laughing, telling him about her final piece for the gallery, something raw, something bold. And then, mid-sentence, she collapsed. One moment she was standing, the next, gone, like a flame snuffed out mid-flicker. "Clara?" he shouted, his voice cracking against the walls. He caught her before her head hit the floor, her body limp in his arms, her breath shallow. Her face was too pale, her pulse too faint. Panic surged through him, real, unfiltered panic, not the kind he had trained himself to suppress in meetings or markets. This was different. This was helplessness. He held her all the way to the hospital, his hand gripping hers, lips pressed to her knuckles like a prayer he didn't know he could still say. At the ER, time turned cruel. Every minute without an answer felt like a lifetime unraveling. When the doctor finally came out and said, "She's stable, just severe exhaustion," Ethan didn't breathe. He crumbled. Inside the dim hospital room, he sat beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest. "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone," he whispered. "Not even for me." Clara stirred, her voice a whisper. "I didn't want to disappoint you." He closed his eyes, forehead resting against her hand. "You loving me has never disappointed me. But me not seeing this almost cost me everything." And in that moment, Ethan Blake, who had once tried to love through distance and silence, realized that loving her meant being present. Not just when she stood tall, but when she couldn't stand at all. Clara healed slowly, gently, and Ethan was there for all of it. Not with grand declarations or promises carved in stone, but with presence, with patience, with the quiet kind of love that doesn't demand to be seen, only felt. Each morning he brought her tea before she asked, listened to her thoughts, even the ones unfinished. Sometimes he'd stand in the doorway of her studio, not to hover, not to interrupt, but simply to watch the way her fingers danced over canvas again. He didn't talk much about the night she collapsed, but everything he did after whispered the same vow: I won't let that happen again. One afternoon, Clara shared something she hadn't told anyone in years. I used to dream of starting a reading club, for kids who don't grow up with books the way I did. A safe place, a quiet one. She said it hesitantly, almost apologetically, as if it were too small, too simple. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, let's do it. 2 weeks later, she stood in front of a small, sunlit space in Brooklyn, freshly painted and full of shelves, waiting to be filled. The sign above the door read, The Quiet Corner, a place for stories, for softness. Clara cried when she saw it. Ethan didn't say anything. He only reached for her hand and held it. He didn't need to speak to say, your dreams matter to me because you do. And just when life felt like it had finally found its rhythm, Clara stood in the kitchen one quiet morning, placed his tea gently on the table, and whispered, we're going to have a baby. Ethan stilled. His hands trembled as he reached for her, one hand on her cheek, the other, hesitating, resting against her belly, like it was something sacred. A single tear slid down his face. He didn't speak of stock markets or blueprints after that. He cleared his calendar, took fewer calls, watched her nap in the late afternoon light, and every evening he'd place his hand over her growing belly and whisper stories, not from books, but from hope. He had once believed love would make him weak, but now he understood. Real love doesn't make you smaller, it expands you. It builds homes inside your chest, where only walls once stood. When their daughter was born, Ethan Blake didn't see a future. He saw everything: tiny fingers, sleepy cries, the way Clara's hand found his, tired but steady, as she whispered, she's perfect. And in that quiet hospital room, surrounded by nothing but soft light and softer breathing, Ethan made a choice. He didn't announce it. He didn't need a press release. He simply resigned. The empire he built, it would go on without him. The towers, the cities, the legacy. He let it all go. Because for the first time in his life, he had something worth holding on to more. Now, his days were measured in Clara's laughter and the sound of little feet learning to find balance. Mornings filled with tea and paint-stained onesies, afternoons wrapped in books and baby giggles at the quiet corner, where Clara still read aloud every Tuesday. He no longer spoke in numbers. He spoke in lullabies. And each night, after their daughter had drifted to sleep, Ethan would sit on the balcony, Clara curled beside him, and wonder how he had ever believed love was weakness. It wasn't. It was the foundation beneath everything that mattered. Not made of concrete or steel, but of breath and touch and staying when it would be easier to run. One night, as autumn curled its fingers around the edges of the city, Clara turned to him and asked, do you miss it? That other life? He looked at her, then at the sleeping baby in her arms. No, he said simply, I was building towers. Now I'm building a home. And for once, he didn't need blueprints. He had love. He had Clara. He had a daughter with his eyes and her mother's smile. And that was everything.